It is winter time, so we have a special guest in our studio to talk about what one of the things that winter means in Colerain Township, and it means that things can happen to the roads. So we have Dan Schulte here in our studio. Thank you so much, Dan.
No problem. That's what we're here for.
Dan, can you tell us what you do at Colerain Township?
Absolutely. So I am the Supervisor Foreman at Colerain Township Public Works. Been there for about roughly 6 years as the Supervisor Foreman.
And you're in charge of roads.
Absolutely.
Now, before we go any further, this is something that I know I constantly get questions about and have to be reminded myself. All the roads in Colerain Township do not belong to Colerain Township.
Correct. Very correct.
So how do folks, what's an easy way for folks to guess which roads are the Colerain Township roads and which roads are not Colerain Township roads?
Well, I would say the very first obvious thing would be if it's a state route, it's not Colerain Township's. It is the state of Ohio's, if it starts with a state route. A good general rule of thumb, now this doesn't apply to every single street in the township, but a good general rule of thumb is if it is a double yellow on that road, meaning a double yellow line, that is a county road or a state road.
Okay, and I want to cover that first because we'll talk about clearing roads. It's winter, so messy things happen to roads in winter, and you're going to get questions about how come that road looks terrible? How come that road's not being cleared? They're not all yours. Some of them are for the state to clear, and some of them are for the county to clear. So I just want to make sure we cover that first.
Absolutely.
So the double yellow line is kind of a clue that it's probably not a township road.
A township road. Correct.
Okay. So for the roads that the township does cover, how much mileage is that? How much are you responsible for?
The website says that it is 114 miles of roadway. Now, I will tell you that that is ever changing. Each and every year we get a little bit else added to us. So as the developments come in, the more miles of road is added. About this time of the year, every year we get a road mileage report from the state of Ohio. So that gives us a good general rule of thumb how many we got. So
Okay.
I'm going to stick to the number of 114.
That's enough. You don't need to add to it because you're responsible for those.
Absolutely.
Sounds
Absolutely.
fair. Are there things that residents should be ready for, getting their car ready to travel on those roads as we look into winter?
Absolutely. So a couple really good things to look for is your air pressure in your tire, because as the cold weather gets colder, the tire pressure tends to drop if there's something wrong with your tire. Make sure your defrost works, make sure your heat works, and most importantly, I'd say make sure the car starts. Batteries go bad in the winter a lot. So that's one thing to make sure that you have a good battery to start the winter with.
So that's good to know. And if your battery is maybe on the edge, maybe don't go into the coldest part of the season with it.
Absolutely.
Start planning,
Yes.
saving pennies.
Yes.
That's
it is always good to go check with your mechanic before the cold season starts so that they can look at that kind of stuff.
no one wants to get stuck it's a crisis if you wait and it's the coldest day of the year and your car won't start, but you're stranded somewhere. But also your car will navigate better if your tires are correctly inflated and things like that. And that's a safety thing because you need to be able to have some grip on the roads.
Absolutely.
Is there anything else when it comes to clearing them, just the township roads, because who cares about the other one? We care about them, but they're not the ones that we're here to talk about. Are there things that residents need to know that help you when you need to get them clear?
A couple of things that come to mind would be, obviously, the more cars that you can get in your driveway, the more cars that you can squeeze in your garages, help us tremendously. It's not as important if we're just salting the roads, but as the snow keeps piling up and you start to see our trucks, which are yellow, and that's another telltale sign, going back to some of the things, but yellow trucks come down with the plows on, that means we're plowing the street, and the more room, the better. So if you can get them in your driveways, get them in your garages, but most importantly, off the roadway, that helps us out tremendously.
Now, that's going to make a difference for the amount of parking that a neighborhood has too.
Very much so. But as soon as you see the snow plow, a good general rule of thumb, now depending on how deep the snow is and what the forecast is forecasting, but a good general rule of thumb is if you see it come down twice and the snow is stopped, after the second time, we shall be done. It's a good general rule of thumb. Curb to curb is what we're looking for as an agency. So the edge of one curb to the edge of the other curb. So basically where the water drains at, that's the key. We want to get the snow to the curb lines so that as it melts, it runs down the curb line the way it's designed to do. Because if you don't, the snow will build up into the roadway, which therefore then when it melts, it will not get into the curb line, which therefore then you'll have ice build up on the roadway.
That is a really good point.
Absolutely.
We're talking about clearing it, and of course, some Colerain Township roads are narrow, so we don't want to make them any narrower by not being able to go curb to curb. But also, that's not just a curb where people park along the road. That's also the drainage for the road.
Yes. So as the car is left out on the road, truck comes by, the plow then will leave what they call a natural windrow or a natural snow row next to the car, which therefore then that snow that was left by the car is not in the curb line, which then can cause basically an ice dam in the roadway until it finds the nearest least resistant route to the curb to get to the curb to drain it.
Yeah, water's just going to go where it's going to go. And like you said, it's going to freeze again.
If it sits there, it will freeze. Right.
So it's not going to drain where we want it to, but then it will also create a little ice rink on the road.
Yes.
We don't want that.
No.
What kind of things does Colerain use? Now, you said the yellow trucks. The yellow trucks mean it's a Colerain truck and not a county truck or a state truck.
A very good telltale sign that if it's yellow, it's Colerain Township.
Okay.
Some of our trucks, the newer trucks, we have stainless steel bodies, so they are gray and they kind of look more similar to the county. But the county is orange, township is yellow, and the state is white. So that's how you can really tell. And actually, even more than that, the state has green lights. And I say lights, I meant beacons. So the state has green beacons. County has orange. We have orange ones, but mainly white ones. So that's another way of seeing what color the beacon is.
So we can look for the truck color, and we can look for the blinking light color, the beacon. Now I feel like every house in Colerain Township can make themselves like a little tracking card. So while you're stuck in your house, if we have bad weather, you can keep an eye on which agency's trucks are coming down your street, and we'll quiz you at the end of the season. Well, we probably won't do that, but we could. So just in case, you better make a sign.
Absolutely.
And so that's one important thing is get your car out of the way.
Yes.
Another thing that I see people do when they're shoveling their space is they put all of that snow out into the street. How does it affect your clearing?
Same way as it would a car. After we've come by pretty much a second time through with a plow, we've now pushed it to the curb line, and if you push it back out into the street, it stays there. And like I said before, 2 times through is basically the telltale sign that we're done and completed with that particular snow run. So if you leave something out in the street, it will freeze and ultimately not cause the water to drain properly.
Okay. That's again, it's not just we left an icy bump of snow in the road, but it will affect drainage in your neighborhood, and we know we care about the drainage in our neighborhoods, and we want everything is designed on that street to bring the water in a particular place, so we don't want to block that.
And if you have weeks or even days of below freezing weather, obviously that ice pack becomes very problematic. You can't enter your driveway and you can't exit your driveway. And if and when we receive the temperatures that we once did, I feel like we've been real lucky the last couple of years. But if we ever receive the temperatures that we once had, that are days and days of below freezing, that is when it would be problematic, because due to the temperature and the road temperature, salt actually, there's a correct temperature where salt will not work or work as fast. So there is a reason why you don't want to keep piling it up in front of your driveway. It would be problematic entering and leaving your driveway.
The salt is not just a magical substance. It also has a freezing temperature.
Yes.
It's just lower.
Yes.
But it's not going to cut it if we get any of that really. Yes. I mean, occasionally we do get that really unexpectedly cold weather.
Absolutely.
So if folks aren't sure if you've already plowed, just don't put it in the street.
Well, the good way of seeing it is that if, like I said, the second time through, so the first time through, our main goal, our main object is to get the road open and clear for emergencies.
Okay.
Obviously, we want to get kids to school, and we do want to do all kinds of, get the people to work and different things like that. But our main goal, first time through with a plow, is to get the roadway open for emergencies.
Okay.
So that's the first time through. Once that happens is when we come back and do what we call curb to curb, which you will see, that is when the snowplow driver will go around the vehicles. So the first time through, streets, like you said, there's some that aren't as wide as others, but majority of them are 23 feet wide. The plow has to overlap that center lane or center line a little bit, so you're still weaving in and out of cars, but you're not actually getting in that curb line. The second time through is when you will see the plow actually in the curb line, and that is when residents, you look at that plow driver, and this is the second time through, and you've already cleaned your driveway once. That is the key to know that after we come by the second time, if the snow has stopped, that is when it is safe to clear it, and you won't see a snow truck come back down there and plow your driveway in.
Okay.
So that's kind of the telltale sign.
That's true. That's the other question residents have is,
yes.
But I also don't want to clear if he's going to plow me back in again. So first of all, if that second pass through has already happened, don't put your snow in the street. But also, that's when it's safe
to do it.
To get that stuff at the bottom of your driveway.
Yes.
Got it. Okay. Okay, so for folks that shovel their driveway before that second pass comes through and they really don't want the truck to leave snow on the bottom of their driveway again, what's the tip that they can use to make sure that that's not going to happen?
A very good rule of thumb is if you are shoveling your driveway and actually facing the street. So if you're shoveling, you're facing the street, you want to place the snow on the right-hand side so that when the plow is angled, it will take the snow. Now, obviously, it's going to take the snow and push it towards your neighbor's driveway, but it's not going to block your driveway. So if you're in your driveway facing the roadway and you put it on the left-hand side, that's when it's a little bit of a problematic thing, that if you've just now pushed all your snow on the left-hand side as you're facing the street, plow comes through, that particular snow is now going to cover your driveway apron back in. So if you put it on your right-hand side, we spread for a lack of better terms, we spread the love or spread the snow, right?
Spread the chill. Spread the snowballs.
So if you're facing the streets, the right-hand side is what you want to aim for.
Okay, and just keep in mind, that plow is just pushing it along the street. So it's going to pick up whatever's there. And, if you don't want it to go anywhere, don't shovel it in the street at all.
Yes.
And then you don't have to worry about that.
Another good general rule of thumb is if you're shoveling, if you start at the edge of your driveway or even in the curb line, shovel it into your driveway, and then as you're in your driveway, put it to the right or left-hand side. If everybody does that, it's a little bit cleaner of a curb line then, because there's no particular piles that are built up in front of your driveway or in front of your neighbor's driveway.
Okay, so and these are things that'll make us all less grumpy. It'll make your driver less grumpy, which we want, because they are doing all the miles of Colerain Township and we want them to be happy. But also us, as homeowners, we don't want snow in front of our driveway. We don't want snow that's frozen there because we missed the last pass through and we're stuck with it until the thaw.
And trust me, as drivers, we don't mean to have to plow you back in. So if we can avoid this, we don't want to do it just as much as you don't want us to do it. We see the cringes, we see them, and we feel bad also. But again, the biggest thing we can take from this is that the curb line has to be plowed correctly. especially if we have temperatures that are going to stay below freezing for a good duration of time, which is 2 nights, 3 nights, and anything after that, we definitely got to keep that roadway clear.
That is really important. And I forget sometimes it's not just about getting snow away from the cars, but that curb line is also a drainage line.
Yes.
And if the water and the melting snow can't drain off, it will pool. It will have a lovely little ice rink right where we're supposed to be driving, which is not the best place for an ice skating rink.
No.
So that's important. Also, we'll be grumpy because our car will be stuck, but there's that too.
The
But
car can't get stuck if it's in the driveway
Yeah.
or in the garage, right? So that's another thing. If we're plowing and we have to plow around your car, that's when we leave basically what we call a windrow, but it's basically snow that is next to your car, in front of your car, and behind your car. So that is also problematic because that will eventually, if the temperatures don't come up to above freezing before that, that will eventually freeze also and become an ice pack.
so if a snow event is coming, I guess I'll say if you don't have a lot of room in your driveway, ask your neighbors if they have a spot. Just get all the cars off of that curb line, because if that curb line is not clear, I know in New England we had a lot of plowing where I grew up, and sometimes we would put them in with permission in a parking lot of the next door church or something like that. Always with permission, it's not our property, but it's just because it's so key to get all the cars out of the plowing range.
Yes. And it saves on time also, Every time that driver has to go out, back around, swing around that car, obviously it's not a lot of time, but as we go through our routes, and we're talking 3 to 4 hours just assaulting, now we're going 2 times down the roadway. It's almost double the amount of time, basically. So each time you have to swing out, swing back in, and you got to take it slow so you don't take a car mirror off, so you don't scrape the car. You got to take it a little bit slower. That time all adds up. So when you talk about, how long it takes, well, that's another thing that you got to take into consideration. Is how many times you got to go out and around a particular vehicle.
What about the kind of solutions you're using on the roads? What are you doing to keep them from freezing up?
So, as we talked about before, salt only works till roughly a good general rule of thumb is 22 degrees. After that, we will pre-wet our salt with calcium chloride.
Okay.
And that will take us to the temperatures that hopefully we will not ever see.
If there is an unexpected weather event, as they call them, how much lead time does Colerain Township need to get mobilized to be ready to cover that?
That's a tricky question because obviously every storm is different.
Right.
Weather is a big dependent, right? So if it starts out as rain, ends up as snow, it gets a little bit more trickier, right? If it's all rain, but the temperatures drop like that overnight, it's a little bit different. But I will say that once it starts to stick, and once we know we've got basically what we'll call simply a snow event, 30 minutes is a good rule of thumb. Our trucks are always inside, which is a thankful thing, in the garage. So they're pretty much ready to go when we leave at the end of that day. So it's just a matter of calling. Thankfully, everybody lives pretty close. So once we get into the shop, that's when we deploy and head out to the streets. And I would say a good way of saying it would be 30 minutes. Obviously, if it freezes a little bit quicker and you catch us off guard just a tad bit, it might be 45 minutes, but somewhere between 30 and 45 minutes would be a good general rule of thumb, I think.
That's really great for township residents to know, is that it's ready. You don't have to dig out your trucks. They are ready to go.
Yes.
You just have to put people in them and go.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. We load them up sometimes. So a lot of times if they're predicting for a bigger snow, we'll have them loaded. So then you just pull out. Sometimes when you're not sure if it'll happen, maybe 2 or 3 trucks will be loaded for the routes that are far west or far north or far south, something along those lines. But majority of the time, I'd say 30 minutes is a great rule of thumb.
If you have a really unexpectedly snowy winter, do you have everything as a township all ready for supplies for that, or?
Absolutely. So we could carry all the way up to 5,500 tons of salts, what we could hold in our dome. We're pretty close to that. We're not quite at 5,500. We have basically 1,800 tons that we call a number, it'll be delivered. That would put us at our 5,500 mark. So we're somewhere between probably 3,500 and 4,500, give or take a little bit. And so when the 1,800 tons is needed, if needed, it's already been ordered and just waiting for delivery now. So
that's fantastic. So, I mean, I think I just like to mention these things because the township is ready. The township has what you need. You have the trucks you need. They're ready to go. They're in a garage so that you can get to them, which is key if there's a snow event. You have the salt you need. You have the people you need.
Absolutely.
That's good news.
We have 14 drivers. So we have 9 snow routes in Colerain Township. Depending on the size of the storm, for lack of a better term, but depending on what is forecasted, at any given time we have 10 trucks in 9 routes. There's a particular route that has grown over the years that we use most of the time 2 trucks in that route. However, if it's forecasted for a bigger, larger storm, we will maybe call in 11 for the parking lots and firehouses. Parking lots of the community center and parking lots of administration. That's something that we also do. And then I believe it's 5 firehouses also. So on a normal run where we're just salting, they're not calling for anything more than, we'll just say 2 inches of snow or so forth. It's 10 trucks, 9 routes, and we hit the firehouses, administration lot, community center lot within that particular run.
How long does it take to hit all of that?
So basically, another good general rule of thumb, depending on the storm, would be somewhere between 1 time through, meaning that you salt 1 time through and you head back, lock up the trucks, somewhere between 3 and 4 hours.
Okay.
For each route.
Okay.
So yes. So, depending on how many drivers you have in is a grand total hours, but it's basically 3 to 4 hours per route 1 time through.
Okay.
Obviously, if you put the plow on, it's going to take you a little bit longer because you're driving a little bit slower, and you got to go up and down that street twice. So that is when it takes you almost double, basically.
Okay.
Yeah.
So salting is quicker.
Absolutely.
But once it gets to the point where you really need to plow it, people need to because people need to keep in mind, it's going to take longer for you to hit all of that mileage of roads.
Another thing that kind of holds you up is obviously traffic, but more importantly, it's what conditions your county roads and your state roads, because obviously the general public that is out traveling also are maneuvering around the same streets that we're maneuvering. So it's one of those things where that can be tricky also. So when you say 4 hours, well, yeah, it's 4 hours, unless those streets are a little bit tricky to maneuver around too.
Unless the state or the county didn't get there yet.
Yes.
Yep, that makes sense. That makes sense.
And as we all know, Colerain Township is a very, very hilly township, especially out west.
Well, I want to thank you for coming in, reminding us of these things. Hopefully, we won't need to know them that much, but really we need to talk about this now.
Absolutely.
If we wait until it snows, it's too late to then take time to have a studio chat because you will be busy. You will be marshaling everybody getting on the road and thinking, oh gosh golly, why didn't those people move their cars? So if we cover that now, we're ready. And I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Oh, no problem. That's what we're here for. Obviously, one of those things that we always talk about too when it's this time of the year is that make sure you keep a good eye out for the news. Listen up to your weather updates, because obviously that's a key way that we notify the residents of what's going on. So as they forecast it, we all know forecasts are one thing. That's a great start. But as the storm starts to develop, that's when you want to keep a good ear out for the weather forecast as they're calling for, so that you know and we know when to stay off them roads and when we can get out there and tackle it and clean it all up, so that everybody, at the end of the day, we all look for safety, right?
Yeah.
Safety is number one thing.
Absolutely. It'll make the roads safer if you can clear them better.
Yeah. Yes.
And that's the key. And like you said, kids are going to school on those roads. The emergency vehicles are going through on those roads. We want to make sure that you can clear them as best as possible with as little ice left as possible. Yes. And we have apps on our phone now to tell us when it's snowing. So, we know when it's snowing. Yes. We know when to get our car off the road. Yes. And that's just something to keep an eye out for.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you for watching Colerain Township. That means you are going to be ready the next time we have snow, which hopefully, I don't know how to say hopefully. I love a good snowstorm, and we all love school to be canceled. So I won't say hopefully we won't get a lot of snow, but let's just make sure we're ready for it if it comes. And if it doesn't come, I guess we have an easier time keeping the roads clear. And we'll see you next time.